Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Suk, and in today's video, I'm going to talk all about rejection. Rejection is an inevitable experience. No matter who you are or what walk of life you're from, you will face some kind of rejection at some point in your life. If you're new to my channel, then I'm Suk, and on this channel, I talk all things positive mindset and healthy living. And if you're looking to lead a healthier and more fulfilled lifestyle, then follow my channel for more videos like this. Whilst rejection is an inevitable experience, the way that we respond to and manage any rejection can impact our life in either a positive or a negative way. Rejection is something that takes so many forms. It could be rejection in your career or in your relationships, or even any kind of venture that you may currently be on. It can be difficult to know when you should be persistent in your objectives and your goals, when you should be tenacious and to continue on the same path, or when you should take a step back and redirect yourself onto a new path and a different direction. In today's video, I'm going to talk all about how to manage any kind of rejection, from the importance of understanding the underlying emotions of rejection, understanding how to reframe that rejection, and lastly, when to know you're actually on the wrong path and it's better to pivot and move in a new direction. The first and most important step is to understand your underlying emotions when you're faced in a situation that leads to you being rejected. The negative feelings that do arise help you to understand any unresolved negative emotions that you might have, and it also helps you to recognize what your desires are and what areas you might actually need to develop personally. For me personally, rejection has always taught me more about myself than the situation itself, and it's really helped me to understand what my desires are and what areas I need to build more resilience and I need to develop further. One of the most powerful and underrated things that you can do when you're facing rejection is to talk to a trusted and safe person. This may be a friend, a mentor, or even a professional and licensed therapist. What talking to somebody trusted and somebody safe actually allows you to do is be vulnerable about how a certain situation is making you feel, and it might help you to understand any underlying unresolved emotions that you might actually have. Oftentimes, what can happen is we fall into this trap of analyzing a situation, analyzing another person's actions or reactions to us, rather than thinking about how a situation is making us feel and what kind of negative feelings it's actually bringing out in us. Let's take the example of dating. It's a great example of where you might feel rejection at some point. If you've been dating somebody for a couple of weeks and you've been on 5 or 6 dates, after those dates, you find that they no longer want to see you and they no longer want to pursue things with you romantically. What that can do is bring about negative feelings of being insecure, feeling unworthy of a relationship, and you may find that you're overly critical about small things in your character and in your personality, and you try to find reasons for why that rejection has actually happened. In this situation, you might find that you're actually trapped in trying to understand the other person's decision, the other person's actions, and you might find that you're trying to rationalize this through blaming your own actions and blaming yourself for the way that you are. What you'll find is that once you take a step back and think about how the situation is making you feel, you might realize that the person is behaving in a way that is bringing about insecurities in yourself, and they might be bringing about feelings of unworthiness when it comes to romantic relationships that you had within yourself that may have gone unresolved until a particular situation like this actually arises. But by speaking to mentors and speaking to somebody trusted, or even taking time to reflect on the situation, what it helps you to do is understand the situation for what it is, but also how it's making you feel. And then you'll be ready to think about how to actually reframe that situation and how to reframe a scenario like this. Once you have taken time to understand the situation and your personal feelings, the next step to do is to set boundaries for the situation itself and to also find ways to reframe the situation and the rejection that goes beyond just your feelings and your emotions. For example, in a situation where you have been rejected, it's really important to think about the situation for what it is, which is simply a misalignment in two people's values and two people's desires when it comes to a relationship. Rather than taking it personal and seeing it as a fault for yourself, for who you are, you see it as this person just doesn't meet the requirements and doesn't have the same values that you may have when it comes to a relationship. I personally always like to see rejection as a form of protection. So it's keeping me away from situations that I deep down don't want, and it's keeping me away from situations that I really don't want to manifest and happen in the long run. Going back to the same scenario where someone has rejected you, if you are somebody that is very tenacious, you may find that you're chasing this person and really trying to figure out why it's not worked and finding ways to try and make it happen. But let's say hypothetically they do agree and they eventually want to date you, their underlying feelings might be that they don't actually see you as a long-term partner, so they waste your time, and they might not have the same values as you when it comes to a long-term committed relationship. Really and truly, we are being protected from things that are negative and are not really in our favor in the long run. Many people struggle to move on from any kind of rejection because they see it as a form of personal attack, and they start to see it as something that they should try to fix and make happen, rather than simply a reason for them to try a new path and to move on. The biggest thing to remember when it comes to rejection is that the situation is often out of your control, and it might be due to other people's beliefs, other people's actions. And in situations like this, you can only focus on your own actions and your own responses and what you can do to move on and to make new things happen in your life. Rather than festering about perhaps why a relationship hasn't worked or what you can do to make it work, what you simply need to do is recognize that the situation is not making you happy, the situation really isn't what you want, and you have to have the faith that something better is out there, because in the long run, you'll always get what you want if you're patient and you have faith and you have the underlying belief that you deserve it and it will come about in your life. One thing to also think about is that the actions that you're taking today might set you up for success in the long run. When it comes to relationships, sometimes the boundary is very clear and you're not supposed to make it work, and it's not something that's aligned with you in the longer run. However, there are some cases where you may find that you're actually just planting seeds today. Perhaps the situation isn't working out, but in the longer run, you're actually achieving something and you're making new things happen. For example, if you're working on a project at work and you find that your colleagues are not very interested or you're struggling to make it happen, then you may feel like you've wasted your time and you may feel like your efforts are not really perceived in a positive way. However, if you try and reframe that as perhaps you've allowed yourself to share your initiative and your work with other colleagues, and you've also taken time to present and you've taken time to understand what your business actually needs, you've then become somebody that is more confident in your own abilities and feels more confident sharing your ideas with your colleagues despite the reaction that you might actually get. Whilst that particular situation at work might not be working out or it's actually not needed, you may find that the relationships that you've built and the skills that you've learned actually help you out in the longer run, so that when another colleague has a project that they're working on, or if they're looking for somebody with your skill set, they know that they can reach out to you and they know who you are. Things might not have worked in the past, but you've planted seeds so that you can develop in the future and you can foster stronger and healthier and better relationships for the future. Now, the examples that I've given today, some of them are very clear cut. When it comes to relationships that are no longer serving you, you can walk away and you can say to yourself, I can actually just do something different. With your work situations, things can be dependent on the context. The last thing that I want to focus on this video is when to know that you need to actually step away and move in a new direction, and when to know that you actually need to be tenacious and when to actually be persistent and continue with trying to achieve your objectives. This all comes down to the underlying beliefs that you have about a particular situation. Let's take that same example of relationships. If you deep down believe that relationships are complicated or that you have to work really, really hard in them, and they involve lots of arguing, they involve lots of, feeling unhappy and negative, you may find that you're actually drawn towards those kind of people and those kind of relationships because it's reflecting this underlying belief that you have. By changing your underlying beliefs in the phase where you're trying to reframe that rejection, when it comes to the next stage where you need to know whether to pivot or to continue on the same path, you'll know that you're making these decisions from a place of confidence, from a place of having faith, and from believing that your life is supposed to be positive and it's supposed to make you feel more fulfilled. For me personally, my feelings have been a strong indicator over the last couple of years as to whether I should persist and continue to do something or whether I should pivot and take a new direction. I find that if rejection is bringing about this huge feeling of resistance and it's making you feel very unhappy and very negative, that is a huge indicator that something in your life is not aligned. It feels like trying to push a door open that you're supposed to pull open. I always like to compare certain situations to building IKEA furniture. I find that if you're trying too hard to make pieces fit together and to screw things in, if it's taking a little bit too much effort, that you're doing something incorrectly or that you're missing pieces or that you're just doing something very, very wrong. And I find that when things are aligned, they fit together perfectly. They are very easy to put together and you're able to do it very, very quickly. One thing that I really want to leave you with today is to think about what you're chasing in life. It's really important that you're chasing fulfillment and happiness and that your underlying beliefs actually allow you to make that happen. You'll know when you're supposed to walk away from something because there will be so many obstacles and so many challenges in the way that are just not going to make that thing happen in your life. If something is just not happening, you really have to reevaluate if it's meant to be and if you should take a new step, a new path, or a new direction. It's very much easier said than done. However, you have to try and cultivate a sense of faith when it comes to making things happen in your life, whether it's your relationships, your career, or anything that you want to do. Having the underlying faith that things will work out in your favor will make it so much easier for you to walk away from rejection, for you to take a new path, and to really find things that are aligned with who you are and who you want to be. Most importantly, when you stop chasing rejection and stop chasing those negative feelings, you'll find that you're able to cultivate a sense of happiness and more fulfillment in whatever you're doing on a day-to-day basis. All in all, in today's video, I hope the main thing that you can take away is that sometimes rejection can be a good thing. It can help you to better understand who you are as a person and the areas that you may need to work on. And I hope that you're able to better navigate certain kinds of rejection in your life through reframing them and to cultivating a better sense of intuition when it comes to either continuing on the same path or pivoting and taking a new direction. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more content like this, then subscribe to my channel and leave me a like below. And if you have implemented these steps to manage rejection and you have examples, then leave me a comment below. I'd love to know how you're actually navigating rejection in your own life and how it's helped you to move on to hopefully better and new things.